Thank you so much for joining me this morning for this session talking about walking poles. I'm really excited to share with you some techniques, some of the tips that I find helpful, and a few exercises that you might consider adding into your routine. So as we get to the end of this session, I'm hoping that these are the things that you're able to take away. I want you to have a better idea of understanding how poles can optimize your walking for a few different things. So for comfort, for stability and balance, and also for fitness, and understanding perhaps which pulling technique is likely to benefit you most given your particular circumstances. And then hopefully you can learn at least one exercise. Those of you who know me exercise is my thing. So hopefully everybody takes one exercise away that you can do with your poles if you have a set of poles. And then I'm hoping that you feel energized to get walking with your poles. The weather is changing, not today, but good day to have a session, right? Or fewer people out walking on a day like today. But yeah, I'm hoping that it really helps you feel motivated to get going and get out there and enjoy all the benefits that walking and pole walking can offer for you. Before we get into it, I want to give you just a little bit about me. So I am a registered physiotherapist and I am the owner here at Zoomers Physiotherapy in Halifax. And I hold, from a credentialing perspective or an experience perspective, I hold the highest credentials in Canada that are recognized for orthopedic, which would be like hands-on care, as well as sport physiotherapy. And I opened Zoomers in 2018 to bring the kind of high quality orthopedic and sport physiotherapy that I saw younger generations were getting, and to bring those services to adults to support healthy, active aging throughout our lifetime. And so this is a picture of me and my husband, Gord, and our two children, Oscar and Hazel, who are currently 6 and 4. And this was a day that we were out sledding this winter, one of their new favorite pastimes for sure. So the program for today, what we're going to go through, we talked about what I want you hopefully to walk away understanding or knowing, but these are the things we're going to review in order to help you get there. Walking technique review. So we're going to have a look at just general walking, what that technique should look like. We're going to do a feature review of the Activator walking poles, which are the poles that I have here. There are lots of different walking poles, and when we get there, we'll talk about how different poles might benefit you, but I will show you specifically the Activator poles. Those are the ones I have here. And then we'll go through the Nordic walking pole technique and the Activator walking pole technique and talk about the pros and cons of each one. Then I'll give you a little troubleshooting tips, and we'll talk about some warm up and cool down exercises that you can do when using your walking poles. And then be sure to stay on till the end. That's when we'll do the draw for a free set of Activator poles. So for 2 free sets of Activator poles. So we will do that as we get to the end. So moving on. This is my daughter Hazel, walking very confidently with her cape and varied other pieces of clothing. But the quality of our walking is important. So Hazel is walking with confidence here, but if I was critiquing her walking, we might need to have a conversation. And so, when we think about the quality of our walking, it's determined by a number of different factors. So that includes our stepping pattern. And that means how our foot is actually moving. So are we moving heel to toe as our foot hits the ground, or are we hitting sort of flat-footed? And we really want to get, it doesn't have to be a really strong heel strike, but you do want your heel to touch the ground before your forefoot or the front of your foot. And then you want to be able to push off your toes in order to generate some propulsion and power forward as you move. The next thing that we want to think about when we're walking is our posture. So is our chest up? Are our eyes up? Are we looking forward? Again, with my children, when it comes to biking, they're both just getting used to being on a bike, and I'm forever saying eyes forward to go forward. And the same is true when we're walking. We want to have our eyes up. So it's important to be watching the ground in front of us to know what's coming, but we want to make sure that we're not looking straight down as we're walking. And so having the confidence to walk with our eyes up is really important. And then, of course, we want to have our shoulders down. So you don't want to feel like your shoulders are rising forward or collapsing forward. Shoulders back and down, using those strong postural muscles. And when we do that, that allows us to do the next piece, which is the arm swing. So we want to be able to allow one arm to swing opposite the leg. So if the left foot is going forward, the right arm is swinging forward. And then that just goes back and forth, alternating sides as we go. The last thing that when I'm looking as a physio at somebody's quality of walking, the other thing I'm thinking a lot about is speed. And so speed of walking, we don't need to be, speed walkers per se, but the speed of walking is important for walking quality. So we want to be moving with adequate speed to be functional and also to be able to really ensure that we're using the muscle, all of the muscle groups that contribute to good walking. Factors such as pain, unsteadiness, and reduced confidence can really negatively impact our walking quality. And so it's important for us to recognize when they might be affecting how we're walking. And sometimes there are exercises that you can do to improve that. And that's where, perhaps meeting with a physiotherapist. And, for instance, what we do here often are called Fit for Life assessments. So you come and we just talk about what you're doing, how you're moving, and what you could be doing to be moving better. So it's important to recognize the things that you can do with your own body. But this is also a place where poles can be really helpful. So thinking about how poles can improve the quality of walking, well, they can reduce pressure through painful joints. And so if you have a painful knee when you're walking, if you can apply some pressure through a pole and as a result of that, take some of the body weight off the knee, that can go a long way to making that knee feel better, which then can allow you to walk a little bit more, quote unquote, normally, perhaps with a better heel to toe push off. And then that improves the quality and speed of your walking. Increasing stability is also really important. So if we feel a little bit unsteady, we tend to take shorter steps. We tend to position our legs wider. And when we do that, again, that negatively impacts our quality of walking. When we add poles in, because they add extra spots on the ground where we make contact with the ground, we go from having 2 contact points with the ground to having 4 contact points with the ground, then that again can allow you to take a better stepping pattern, which can improve the quality of your walking. When we have better comfort and when we have better stability, this boosts our confidence. And remember, I talked about the importance of having your eyes up and chest up. When we're not confident when we walk, we tend to lean forward and collapse forward. And when we do that, then we're tending to slump forward. Again, it reduces our step size, reduces the way we can use our feet normally in that stepping pattern. And that has a negative impact. So if we can increase our comfort and stability and feel more confident when we're walking, not be as concerned about what's happening directly at our feet, we can keep our eyes up, keep our chest up, and engage our muscles better. This increased muscle activation and stability increases the walking speed. So all of these things, you can see how something as relatively simple, and I won't say that it's simple to use walking poles, but something that's as relatively simple as introducing walking poles into your routine can go a long way to improving the quality of your walking. So now I'm going to speak specifically about these activator poles. And so I'm just going to grab this set that I've got here. And that's what you can see in your picture. So the Activator walking poles were actually developed in Vancouver by an occupational therapist. And the reason that I really love them is because they have this ledge that you can see in the picture there. And then you can also see here, as I hold that up, you can see that there's just a ledge right here. And so we'll talk about why that's important, but that's why I really enjoy these particular poles. When we talk about the tip type, so this would be on the bottom of a walking pole, you can have different bottoms. And so this one that you see here is the boot tip. So this tip looks like a little shoe. And again, we'll have a closer look at that in a couple minutes, but we can use the boot tip on these poles. We can use the bell tip, which looks more like the bottom of a cane. And then the carbide tip is actually the tip of the pole itself. And that allows you to get a little bit of grip if you're on terrain that gives a little bit. So like sort of a crushed path or something like that. There's a little ferrule at the bottom of these right here that reduces the vibration that comes up into your hand as you plant the pole. That's really important in terms of reducing the repetitive strain through the upper extremity. Although poles are a wonderful thing to use when we're walking, our arms are not accustomed to being part of the walking process. And so it's important to reduce the vibration that comes up through them in order to ensure that we don't end up with any difficulty in those joints. The core grip handle is also a really nice wide grip handle on these poles. And so it means that you don't have to have a tight grip, but you do have to be able to grip. So that's an important thing when we talk about which poles might be the right ones for you. You do have to be able to maintain a grip. Whereas some of the other types of walking poles that have a wrist strap, you don't have to be able to maintain the grip. You can release the grip because you're attached to the pole. And so there are circumstances when that might be a better pole choice for you. And then the last thing, again, like I said at the beginning, what I love about these poles is that they have this ledge on the top, on the bottom. And so that's where your hand actually rests. And as you're pulling, you can plant down and push down through that ledge. And that's what really allows you to unload those painful joints or feel like you get a little bit better stability as you're walking. And again, you'll see why that is valuable when we go through the walking techniques. It also, there are, very few incidents of injury really associated with walking poles. However, if you are using one with a wrist strap, an important thing to keep in mind is that because you're attached to the pole, in the event that you were to have a slip or heaven forbid a fall, then sometimes we can actually end up hyperextending the thumb or the wrist over the pole when our hand lands on the ground. And so whereas something like this, where you don't have the strap attached, then the pole just falls away. So again, different types of walking poles are great. I just happen to have the Activators here, but I do find for some people that having that ledge and allowing to push down really is helpful from particularly, as a physio, I'm dealing oftentimes with people who are using poles to help, again, reduce pain or increase stability. And I find that ledge feature is quite helpful for that reason. So if you've got your pole, if you have a set of poles, pull them out. If you don't have a set, don't worry about it. I'm just going to go through tip selection. So again, I was mentioning this one. I've got the boot on here, which you can see in the middle of your screen there. And it looks like a little boot. And an important thing to think about with the boot is that the boot always points behind you. Just it's always something I have to remind myself. But this one is we're going to tend to use when we're using the poles more for fitness type benefits as opposed to stability or offloading painful joints. If we're doing that, we're going to be more likely to use the bell type one that you can see on the left side of the screen that looks more like the bottom of a cane. And then the carbide tip that I was talking about that you could use to grip down into a path if you were locally here at Point Pleasant Park or something like that, you could use the carbide tip and that would just dig down and give you a little bit more stability on a softer surface. And then again, like I say, the boot tip positioning, you just want to make sure that the toes of the boot are pointed behind you. And height. So this is an important thing that lots of people ask me about in terms of the height measurement. So if you have your poles, I want you to stand up. And what you want to do, I'm just going to step back here so you can see me. You want to stand nice and tall, just in an upright position, and then take your pole, take your elbow, bend it to 90 degrees, and then grip the pole. And that's where you want your pole to be ideally when you're walking. Now you may, when you're walking, be walking with your poles back behind you. We're going to go through those tips in a minute, those positions in a minute. But as far as measurement, it's the same measurement regardless of the walking technique that you're going to use. So body standing nice and tall, hand at your side, bend your elbow up to 90 degrees, and then place your hand on the grip. That's where you want to be. Now that's where you want to be once you've been walking with poles for a while. If you're new to poling, you might actually want to position that a couple inches down, so 1 or 2 notches down, in order to have less pole to manage, just as you get used to managing the pole as you walk. Okay, so 90 degrees is the typical one, but if you're just getting going with it, you might want to think about dropping it a couple inches. All right, if you're standing, you're welcome. Complimentary break from sitting, but now you can sit back down if you like, or stay standing. All right, so now we're going to get into the 2 different types of walking techniques, primary types of walking techniques with the poles. First, we'll talk about Nordic walking technique. So this is the most traditional type of walking pole use and really came out of cross-country skiing, right? So if you think about the movement that we see with cross-country skiing, that's what we want to try to create with this Nordic walking technique. The primary benefit of this kind of walking technique would be an increased fitness demand associated with walking. So remember, I said your upper body is not used to being involved with walking. And so when we start involving and pushing with our arms on every step that we take, we get a lot more muscle activation. So a lot more fitness demand, you burn more calories and build more muscle as you're out there walking. Some secondary benefits to the Nordic walking technique are that it does add some balance points. So you do have other contacts with the ground than you would otherwise have. And it does reinforce swinging your arms. Sometimes we can forget to swing our arms, and that's a really important part in terms of engaging our trunk muscles when we walk. And it tends to increase the step length a little bit as you're walking. So those are things that just sort of happen on a secondary level. The starting position for this is going to be with the arms down at the sides and the poles loosely held behind you and we're going to have the boot tips on. So if you have a set of poles, then again, you can stand up and practice this with me if you like a little bit. If not, then you can enjoy this demo. So this picture of me down in the bottom here is showing me mid Nordic walking stride. And so you'll notice that my arms are down relatively straight, and the poles are planted behind me. So we want to follow this stepwise approach to getting started if we're using the Nordic walking pole technique to increase our fitness while walking. So remember, we're going to have those boot tips and they're going to be toes pointed backwards. And at first, when you get used to doing this, and if you've got some space at home, again, feel free to give this a try. Just look out for lamps and other people. But at first, I want you to drag the poles on the ground behind you just as you get moving. So I'm going to step back here so you can see me. So here I am just here, and then I'm just going to step, whoop, make sure you step opposite arm and leg, just dragging those poles behind you as you go. So not trying to push into them, but just getting used to dragging. As we do the Nordic walking technique, we really want to think about the arms moving in a handshake movement. So again, I'll just step back here, and without my poles even, you want to think about bringing your arms up as though you're shaking somebody's hand in front of you. So if you've got the poles, then really you're just taking that back behind you and then reaching the hand forward, but the pole stays back behind you. So the hands just come a little higher, and you start to feel like you're able to feel a bit more contact with the boot tip behind you as you plant. And then we can press down on the ledge, bringing the thumb down to the thigh as we push. And you want to lift the boot tips just slightly so that once you get going, you're not dragging the pole, but just slightly lifting as you go. So I'll just give you a quick little demo here. Here we go. So I'm going to start with my left leg forward, right arm is swinging forward, and then I would just switch like this. There we go. So as easy as that. Now it's not that easy. It takes lots of practice to get used to. Often, you know, maybe 2 or 3 sessions of 10 or 15 minutes practicing getting the coordination of that down. It's especially helpful if you've got a large space to work in so that you're not worried about stopping and starting. That tends to be the part that's actually the hardest to get going. So again, this would be the Nordic walking pole technique where we're doing it mostly for fitness, the boot tips on, and the poles are planting behind us as opposed to in front of us. All right, so now we're going to move on and talk about the activator technique. So this technique is one that I use as a physio a lot. And I'm just going to set my poles up here because for this one, I need my bell tips on. So with the activator technique, the primary benefit is going to be that it allows us to offload painful joints, such as the foot, the knee, the hip, and I even find for some people the lower back can be really helpful. It also, using this technique, can help with increasing our balance and stability because we're going to be able to press a fair bit more down through the poles. And then it's also going to help us, as a result of those things, increase our confidence with our walking and hopefully be able to give us a little bit more duration. We also certainly get an increased fitness benefit. But again, if I was just helping somebody get started with walking poles for fitness and there was no need to increase stability or offload painful joints, then I might well suggest the Nordic walking technique. But if I have these other considerations that would be my primary benefit to using them, then I'm going to tend to choose the activator technique. So the starting position for this, instead of having the arms straight down to the side and thinking about planting the pole behind me, now I'm going to start with my elbow bent at 90 degrees at my side. So again, even if you don't have an activator pole there, you can try this positioning and technique just to feel how it might be different. If you have the boot tips on the bottom, it'll be very difficult to feel how you would get stability and be able to press down through because you really do need the bell tip as opposed to the boot tip in order to get that. All right, so the activator technique, here we go. You've got your poles with your bell tips. You're gonna have an easy grip on the poles. These ones conveniently have an R and an L on the top. So easy to know which side should be on the right and which side should be on the left. And it matters because the ledge needs to be on the outside in order to be able to push down and offload those painful joints or increase stability. So again, just showing you here a little demo. You can see me on the static picture there, but standing here, if we step and plant the pole forward at the same time, that's the way we're going to use the activator technique. In this technique, I'm going to walk towards you here. You can see that the poles stay really vertical compared to in the Nordic walking where they're really back on a diagonal. And because they're vertical like that, it allows us to push straight down into the pole and again, increase our stability or take the pressure off the sore area. Just like doing the Nordic technique, it takes some practice. It's not going to be right away that you get it and get the coordination, but it is definitely worthwhile trying. And again, you want to make sure, particularly in this technique, I think this is where the activator poles are particularly important because they allow you that looser grip and to push down through the ledge as opposed to pushing down through a wrist strap. So troubleshooting, as you saw there, sometimes even for the person teaching the presentation, it can be tough to get the coordination right at the beginning. So the quick start technique to make sure that you've got the correct leg and arm moving together would be just positioning yourself with one foot. So in this case, I've got my left foot and right pole forward, and then I'm going to lift those two, plant them down, and get going. Sometimes that'll just quickly get me into the right pattern, and it's a good little cheat if you're out there and feeling flustered as you are switching from one to the other. Next thing is, if you are using the activator technique and you find that, or the activator pole, sorry, whichever technique you're using, and you're finding that your grip is getting tired, you can also do a grip where you just grab the top of the pole for a short period of time over the top, front to back, or even you can turn the pole sideways and hold that way. And that just gives you a change in the muscles that you're using for the gripping. And oftentimes, if you just do that for a minute or two and then go back to the more traditional grip, pushing down on the ledge, often that's enough to just rest and relax those muscles. If you find you're using the boot tips, so especially if you're using that Nordic walking technique and they're slipping, then sometimes you need to just think about lifting the tips just a little bit more, and that'll allow you to get a stronger plant, and usually that'll solve the slipping problem. So those are just a couple of quick tips that can be helpful. And again, when we get to the portion at the end here, I'll be happy to take your questions about these and troubleshoot any other issues. So this is just, I have mentioned that fitness can be increased by using walking poles, but it increases your muscle use by more than 40%. And so sometimes that's almost unbelievable when you're using the poles and you think, well, it's not like I'm pushing that hard. But what I want you to do is, if you've got a pole there, just stand up for a moment. And I want you first to push down, put one hand on your pole, put your other hand on your belly. And then what I want you to do is push down through the pole and feel what happens in your abdominals. You should immediately feel an abdominal contraction just by having to push down through the pole. The other thing you can do, as long as you can comfortably reach over with your other hand, if you push down in the pole, you should feel some work in the tricep muscle in the back of your upper arm. And so both of those muscles, the tricep and the abdominals, would not normally be engaged in that way when we're walking. And so every step you take, you're getting increased muscle contraction, and that's how it increases our muscle use by more than 40% and increases the caloric demand or the calorie burn while you're out there walking. So if you're ready to get started, hopefully you're feeling excited with that little bit of tidbits of information. And it's important first to determine which technique will benefit you most. So you want to think about, am I looking more for more muscle demand? So then you probably want to go to the Nordic walking with the diagonal poles pointing backwards with the boot tips. Or if you're looking to increase comfort and stability, then you may be more likely to look at using the activator technique, and that may give you more benefit. I want you to start by only using the poles for a small portion of your walk. So if you're somebody who's accustomed to walking, say half an hour or 45 minutes, then you might only use the poles for 10 or 15 minutes for the first couple of weeks even that you're walking. And that's so that your shoulders and the rest of your muscles can accommodate to this new amount of use, right? And also to make sure that you're troubleshooting any technique issues as you get out there and get a little bit more used to it, because you don't want to practice, because we do so many steps when we go out for a walk. If you practice something slightly incorrectly for 45 minutes, is likely to make you a little bit sore and then might make you feel discouraged. So better to start for 10 or 15 minutes out of your walk. Just get going with it, and maybe consider having a little help getting started with it and troubleshooting, again, any particular issues for you, given your particular health circumstances. And then the last thing is consider using some warm up and cool down exercises alongside your walking program. So that's the next piece, last piece we're going to talk about today. So the warm-up exercises, and I often get questions about warm-ups and cool downs, and should I do it? Do I need to do it? And the warm-up exercises for walking are nice, but I would say not necessary. So they're a great thing to do for sure, but if you were going to skip them, it's okay. when we talk about cool down, I'm going to have a different story there, but it is really nice. The purpose of a warm up is to just let your body know that you're about to do some exercise or activity, and you want to make sure that you move your body through the exaggerated positions required for the activity to ensure that there's no soreness or stiffness or tightness that you're not aware of. So the nice thing with walking is that because for the most part, we're walking around a little bit in our day, we're already a little bit warmed up for it. And often, more than anything, what I suggest to people is that the first few minutes of your walk perhaps are just a little bit slower, just sort of ease into it for 3 or 4 minutes, and then you can kind of hit your regular cadence and off you go. But if you were interested in doing some warm-up exercises, these are some great options. So you can see at the pictures at the bottom of the screen there, there's these 4 examples of the dynamic side-to-side lunge, and you can have the poles planted in front of you. So the advantage of having the poles is that if you're out at a park or along a path and you want to do these exercises right before you get going, because that's when they would be valuable. If you were to do these exercises at home, holding a countertop or something for stability, and then get in your car and drive 15 minutes to the place that you're going to go for your walk, they're not going to do you much good. So by having the poles there, you've automatically given yourself some stability and the ability to do some of these stretches. So the side-to-side lunge, you plant the poles in front of you. You can even add a little row or squeezing the shoulder blades back as you lunge side to side, bending the knees as you see in the first picture there. Second picture, you can see I'm using the poles for a bit of stability, and then I'm swinging the leg forward and back. In the third picture, I'm just doing some ankle circles. So this is always a good idea, especially if you're walking on terrain that's at all unpredictable, to help reduce the chance of rolling your ankle. And then the last one would be doing just a little bit of lifting the arms up and out to the side, just to warm up that shoulder a little bit, because again, you're going to use them in this walk where you might not normally use them quite as much. And for this, you would just want to spend in your dynamic warm-up maybe 5 to 10 repetitions of each of those movements. So not a lot, just take you a couple of minutes. Cool down exercises, these ones I would say are more necessary. So they don't need to be right after your walk, although they're probably most helpful there. This says plant poles forward and out to the sides as you stretch. And so you're going to consider including stretching the muscles that do the most work for us when we're walking. Okay, so the first picture down at the bottom here, you can see is stretching the hip flexor muscle, which is the muscle right in the front pocket zone of your hip. And so you step one leg back, bringing your body forward so that you can feel that stretch through the hip. The standing calf stretch is the second stretch that you see there. Very similar position to the first one, but you'll notice that my heel is down instead of being lifted up. And that'll allow us to stretch in the lower leg below the knee, behind the leg. And the third one there is the hamstring stretch. So that's the thigh muscle in the back of the leg. And important when you're doing that stretch to be able to pull your hips backward. And often we need, as a result of that, we do need to hold something for stability. So the poles, again, can be really helpful there to making sure we're in the right position. You'll notice my lower back isn't rounded at all. I'm just pulling my hips back, keeping my spine in a neutral position, which is really important for back health and safety in that stretch. The last one is the chest stretch. And so this one, I'm just standing, lifting my poles up and out to the side. And again, you could have your legs side by side as I am there, or you can have one leg forward and one leg back for more stability if you needed it. So those are some great examples of cool down stretches that would be helpful. And these ones you would want to hold anywhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 30 seconds probably. And you'd probably want to do at least 2 of them, maybe even 3 on each side. And again, like I say, it's ideal to do them right after your walk, especially if you're walking to and from your home or wherever your starting and final destination points are. But if you're driving, what I would actually suggest is finishing your walk, drive home, and then maybe do your stretches at home, because just being in the car for any amount of time will tend to tighten your muscles up a little bit. So you might be better off to do your stretch after that drive as opposed to before. So warm up, you should do it very close to the walk if you're going to do it and at the site. And cool down, perhaps if you have to drive to get home, maybe actually wait and do your cool down stretches when you get home. So takeaways from today. It's important to pick the right polling technique to meet your specific needs. And so it's important to know your body well and to know what your goals are and what's reasonable to ask your body to do. It's also important to make sure that you have the poles set up properly for you, and that you're using the proper technique with whichever of the options you've selected. And then remember that using poles can really optimize your walking comfort, stability, and fitness, and your confidence with walking. And that's ideal in terms of just feeling motivated to get out there and, like I say, enjoy the benefits of a walking program. So a couple little notes on how we can help you if you're feeling motivated to get going, but you're not really sure where to start. Then we're happy to have you come in and do a Fit for Life assessment with one of our physiotherapists. They're one of the unique offerings that we have here, where it's really about talking with the physiotherapist about what you're currently doing, what you want to be doing, any areas that you're concerned about, but not an injury assessment per se. And then we can help you determine whether or not you're doing the sorts of things that you need to be doing in order to achieve your goals and continue enjoying the activities that you love, or if there's something that you might need to inject into your routine to set yourself up for success. And then also, certainly we could help you in a session like that understand whether or not poles are a good solution for you. If you've decided that you do want to be set up with a pair of Activator poles and you're ready to get going, and you need a pair, then we're happy, if you choose to buy a set from us here, we're happy to set you up for a free 15-minute session with one of our physiotherapists, and they'll help you make sure that you get them sized correctly and you can practice your technique a little bit with them, just so that you can feel a little bit more confident moving forward. And the last thing that we've got that might be of interest to you is, if you've already got a great walking program, that's wonderful, with or without poles. But it's also important to remember that we build strength. So walking is a great exercise, but it doesn't do everything that we need in terms of maximizing our strength or optimizing our strength and our stability. And so we have a Club Z fitness program here led by physios, and it's available virtually, so you can attend from really anywhere in the world. And we have live classes where we interact back and forth with you so that we can give you great feedback on the exercises as you do them. So if you're interested in that, then we'll send along some information after the session today, and then we're happy to answer any questions about that you have, or I can answer them at the end. Last little bit, we'd love you to stay connected with us. I hope you've enjoyed our session here today. Remember, don't log off, because we've got to do our draw for our free set of polls. But these are the ways that you can stay connected with us. So we do have a website, zoomershealth.ca. We've got lots of great information and resources there. We're also very active on Facebook, which is how most of you have probably found us. So be sure to follow us along there, and check back at our page regularly so you can see what we're up to. We've also launched a YouTube channel. So if you go into YouTube and search Zoomers Physio, you'll find us there, and we're offering all kinds of great tips there for moving through your day a little bit more comfortably, balance exercises, strength exercises, all kinds of little tidbits. So it's worth checking us out, and be sure to subscribe and hit the little bell on YouTube so that it lets you know when we've posted something new. But we're putting new things up there every week. And then last, watch for special events. So this was a special event, and our next one coming up is Get Moving with Mom, which is a free virtual class that my mom and I are going to offer together from here. So half an hour of just gentle movement and stretching to celebrate Mother's Day. So we're excited about that, and you can sign up for that just the same way you did for this session. So it's a free online booking through our regular booking software through zoomershealth.ca, or you can call us at the clinic too.